When a metagame shifts this much that you see actually Valence come out of nowhere here and start taking down top tier events, it's very, very interesting. Welcome to the new metagame shift. Hey, to the 34% of you that have not smashed 11 crap out of that subscribe button, smash it so we can climb up, you guessed it, the 110,000 ladder here. So we have the Yu-Gi-Oh! Metagame report here from the YTC shop, and this is basically everything that they've gathered off of Twitter out of the last weekend here. So 15 tier elements is your most represented seeded deck. Not a single soul should be surprised to know that this deck has been like the highest represented monster in the room. It's just how it's been, it's how it's going to be, and you're not going to see any change in that representation anytime soon. All right, so that's a really big one here. So as you push on down here, we have 4 Labyrinth sitting at the dinner table as the other category, which I also, well, as the other like biggest represented deck, which I think is very, very interesting. Now that we are in week 1 of Cyberstorm Access, you are seeing branded decks. They did not count for a lot of the Bysteel variants that I've seen. I have seen so many of these Bysteel Turbo Synchro decks that it is actually insane. I almost would say that would be the most other represented deck over Labyrinth. But for the data that they have here, I found that was very, very interesting. We also had 2 Tri-Brigade decks, which is kind of pushing Tri-Brigade down the variant ladder here. We also had 2 Exo-Sister, 2 Kashtira. Remember, Kashtira has evolved into Ogre control effectively. And then we have Valence. Now, this was a big, big one here. I don't know what happened. Valence just showed up in the TCG, and then it just showed up in the OCG. Something's going on here with this, but it's actually very interesting. We also had Flunderies, Lyrilless, Tri-Brigade, Gishki, Adamancipator, Cybers. Lightsworn actually showed up this weekend. We had Trap Tricks, Thunder Dragon, Endymion, Pendulum Magician, Blackwing, and Rika, just to kind of name off all of your other decks that had tops. But think about that. Out of everything in those categories, that's diversity minus tier elements for sure. So the first deck we're going to look at here is, what is tier elements doing here? Did they get any fresh new shiny toys out of the latest set? No, they didn't. Unfortunately, the top contender is very, very resilient in its deck build. I mean, King of the Swamp, the biggest thing that this deck has going for it now is we get access to Winda. The fact that Winda makes this deck into the monster that it actually is, I mean, you get to do all of your standard fusion plays that you get to do because of King of the Swamp, but in addition, you get access to make Winda, which is just going to detour your opponent. It's not like people are playing Dark Ruler no more or things like that to try to stop access points to Winda. No. It's actually quite the opposite. If you see a Winda, you're just kind of like, well, that's game. And unfortunately, you will see here as we kind of climb on down here, you might see some diversity shine, and there might actually be outs here to actually showcase some of these things. So we move on along here. Labyrinth playing Phoenix Wing Blast. Wow. I cannot tell you the last time that we saw Phoenix Wing Blast show up in a format. Well, we're in an interesting place right now in the OCG because they can afford to run these slower cards. Putting a card back on top of your opponent's deck detours them an entire turn effectively, which kind of just nullifies everything that they've been trying to do up to that point. Yeah, it's a discard, but you have enough engine pieces that you should be able to kind of alleviate that. And as you do see down here, we are taking, massive advantage of all of my favorite engine in the world, yield DDDs to make the big Deus Ex Machina, and then kind of punish your opponent through that card. I know a lot of decks don't have outs to good old Deus Machina, and it's just going to be a pressure card to put your opponent into a really, really bad position overall. Next up here is actual cluster pile Cybers. Okay, so first of all, see that we are playing Mathmech Circular in this, which is fine. Standard Mathmech plays. I see that we are playing the Link 5 Firewall Dragon. What are we doing here? This is absolutely the pile of cards that you want to see when it comes to these crazy little ideas out here. And let's not forget, I mean, like, obviously buy steals are running around very, very heavily, but like, this is going to be one of those interaction points where you get the chance to see that new cyber stuff really shine here, and it really kind of puts you in an interesting position in the metagame. So I am happy to see that, yes, the new stuff is taking off. There is some sort of representation out here for these crazy little cyber stacks. All right, the new means that the new stuff didn't quite miss the mark. Next up, you have what was probably by far one of the more interesting lists out of the week. It was actually Lightsworn Turbo here. Now, what I actually found very interesting about this was you're going to use the Punk package to climb up into the Chaos Ruler, and your entire life plan is you want to access Rongo Reminiad as soon as possible to make sure that you can actually have a very strong monster on the field. Now, unfortunately, we don't have access to Rongo Bongo Turbo, but because this exists, this gives a very anti-meta deck, I guess, really the chance to play. I don't even know if you can really call this anti-meta at this point, because it's just you're trying to put a giant floodgate monster on the field and then, proceed to try to win the game through that monster. And unfortunately, is it really as strong as it seems? I do think that the answer is yes. But you just don't see Rongo Reminiad show up all that much because they really feel like they have better options at a lot of these other stages out here in the game. Next up is going to be Valence, but this list is much different than some of the other ideas that I've kind of have seen out here. They're playing the Super Heavy Samurai package in this deck, which gives this deck some universal scales to actually kind of punish the opponent. It's a free advantage engine. Plus, all of the Valence stuff is going to be free chicken tendies. All right, you're going to be setting up all of these free monsters here, and you're just going to be laughing your opponent. Also, the Valence decks in the OCG have that really new, big, strong, cool, awesome boss monster. Little guy looks like he's riding the little unicycle, which ends up turning out to be a powerhouse itself here. Now, obviously, this deck does have access to Electromite, which can open up some other interesting doors that this deck really has here. But I do think that the power scaling that you're going to see for this absolutely cool. All right, I didn't actually think anytime soon that we would see a Valence deck actually come out, but man, I was proven wrong. Next up is Fallen of Albas. Now, this was a 60-card Grass Turbo variant here. Now, I know a lot of people are like, well, how are you supposed to, fit all of these different Fallen of Albas lore cards into the same deck? Well, the answer is that grass looks greener, or so the OCG says. I see that we are having access to the Scythe and the side deck, 2 copies of the Grand Finale Dragon, 1 of the new Albas Fusion, and it looks like we're playing Peter, the Chaos Ruler, and the really big Fleur-de-Lis Synchro to kind of wrap up like what you're doing. Also, only 1 copy of the powerful spell card Fusion Deployment over there in the side. That almost feels very, very criminal, getting away with only 1 copy of that. So very, very interesting ratios and card choices that we're pulling into this variant. But I understand the diversity and things that they're trying to go for here with this. I mean, when you get Grass looks greenered, your whole day gets better. Next up here was, this is going to be an example of what I was saying about, some of these Dragon Link variations. Now, this is going to be more full on to Dragon Link versus, something like the Buy Steel good stuff, where, you're not really trying to lose the game here. No, we are playing the Light and Darkness support here with Duality, which actually is pretty cool. And unfortunately, this list is also playing Grass looks greener. So, obviously you resolve Grass. You kind of go into one of those winning positions. You see our Buy Steel package is slightly more contained versus a lot of the other builds that I will be covering here in the near future. But once again, this is a good example of how the OCG is evolving Dragon Link right now. Obviously, use this as a nice little concept line in case you want to kind of start to mess around with this as well. So, good stuff. I am very happy to see that this is starting to work itself out. Shout out to Chaos Ruler being a stupid, dumb, good card. And then we also have, this was probably the most interesting thing out of the weekend here. We actually had Constellars, Satellar Knights, actually take down a event. Now, I'm not exactly too crazy to see that, the merge hybrid's working, but it is cool to see that Teller Knights actually got the chance to shine. Like, when was the last time you saw Teller Knights actually get the chance to do something? I'll wait. The answer is not quite sometimes. So, yeah, only 2 evenly matched feels a wee little bit weird, but I understand some of the ratios and some of the ideas that they're really trying out here. So that is the breakdown that we have for today. What do you guys think? Please leave a comment down below, tell me what you guys think, and I will see your beautiful faces back here later today, guys. Peace out. Patrons, thank you.
Thank you so much for watching. Check out these other videos.